Okay, let's jump right into this. Today, we're taking an absolutely incredible journey. And I don't just mean a physical trip across the globe, but a journey right through the mind of a deeply, deeply observant traveler. We're going to be exploring the massive, beautifully curated archive of a blog called The Transcendental Tourist, penned by Aniano Jose Poliquit. In today's super fast-paced digital age, travel content is so often reduced to these 15-second dopamine hits, right? Like a quick video of a trendy cafe or a fleeting selfie in front of some famous monument. But what we're looking at today is literally the exact opposite. It's this profound, long-form exercise in deep observation. So if you've ever wondered how long-term, deliberate travel actually shapes our inner lives, you are in for an absolute treat. Okay, let's dive into this core mission statement. The Transcendental Tourist, Reflections on the Road, is an introspective travelogue written by a budget traveler. That single sentence really sets the tone for everything we're about to uncover. Notice the pairing of those two specific ideas, budget travel and introspection. Think about it. When you travel on a budget, you're pretty much forced out of those comfortable, insulated bubbles of luxury tourism. You're taking local transit, you're eating in neighborhood markets, and you're just generally experiencing the everyday friction of the real world. And that friction, that is exactly what breeds introspection. This material isn't just a simple checklist of destinations. It's a really rich, continuous dialogue about how the physical realities of being on the road profoundly shift a traveler's soul.
17. That is the sheer scale of the project we're looking at. And it's honestly what makes it such a monumental achievement. 17 years! We're talking about a timeline spanning from this blog's inception way back in May 2009, all the way to entries mapped out for April 2026. Just put that starting date into perspective for a second. May 2009 entirely predates the massive explosion of modern social media travel influencer culture. This thing began as, and completely remains, an authentic digital journal. Maintaining that level of rigorous introspection, international travel, and detailed documentation for nearly 2 straight decades, that gives us an incredibly rare, unbroken timeline of personal growth. So here's how we're going to break our journey down today. We'll be looking through 5 distinct lenses: the art and history of Italy, tracing faith in Israel, Japanese culture and winter wonders, spirituality in Nepal and Morocco, and finally, we'll look at the blogger behind the whole journey. Kicking things off with Part 1, the art and history of Italy. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the curation of these post titles reveals a traveler who just flat out refuses to stay on the surface. First off, look at that clever alliteration with Venus the Virgin and Vespucci. But more importantly, instead of just marveling at the architecture of the Colosseum and moving on, the author is engaging critically with these historical narratives. Take the entry Artemisia Slaying Patriarchy, for example. This dives right into the life and work of Artemisia Gentileschi, the brilliant 17th century Baroque painter. Gentileschi famously channeled her own survival of trauma into these powerful, visceral pieces of art featuring strong women from myth and the Bible. By focusing an entry on her legacy, the author transforms what could have been a standard Italian art tour into a profound reflection on resilience, gender, and the raw human emotion poured into Renaissance canvases. It's all about extracting real knowledge from the art, not just passively observing it.
Moving right along to Part 2, Tracing Faith in Israel. As our geographic focus shifts over to the Middle East, the whole thematic lens pivots beautifully toward religious antiquity. The writing moves away from art critique and into tracing deep biblical history. For instance, in Garden of the Agony, the author is reflecting on literally standing among the ancient gnarled olive trees of Gethsemane. It's this quiet moment of grappling with the physical roots of faith. And then in the Gospel according to Barlucci, we get a fascinating exploration of Antonio Barlucci, the architect who designed many of the most famous shrines in the Holy Land. It really becomes a deep dive into how modern architecture attempts to capture and honor ancient spiritual anguish and triumph. But even when dealing with all this immense historical weight, the writing still manages to retain a really sharp, engaging wit. Just look at the title, Caesarean Sections. That is a masterful double entendre right there. On one level, sure, it refers to the physical location, Caesarea Maritima, the spectacular ancient port city built by Herod the Great. But the sections aspect? That's a deep historical cut into the layers of the city itself. The author dissects the ruins, peeling back the strata of Roman amphitheaters, Byzantine infrastructure, and Crusader fortresses. It's just a brilliant, playful way to frame the archaeology of a region that has been conquered, rebuilt, and sliced apart by different empires for millennia. Let's move to and see how this builds in Part 3, Japanese Culture and Winter Wonders.
32. Japan clearly exerts a unique, almost magnetic pull on this author, commanding an impressive 32 posts in the source categories. That is a high concentration of writing, and it indicates a fascination that goes way beyond a casual holiday. Japan offers this fascinating mirror for introspection because of its striking duality. You have the hypermodernity of its neon cities contrasted immediately with the fierce preservation of ancient tradition. And over these 32 entries, the author uses this unique environment to explore how a society balances forward momentum with deep cultural memory. And the author just beautifully balances two distinct sides of the Japanese experience here. On one hand, there is this deep, quiet appreciation for the country's frozen landscapes. We're talking about exploring the silent, snow-blanketed streets of Sapporo, where the sheer volume of winter basically forces a kind of meditative calm. But then, contrast that quiet awe with vibrant, active cultural participation. Over in Food and Ninja Moves in Yamanashi, the narrative totally shifts to uncovering local culinary secrets and exploring the historic ninja lore of the region. It is this seamless blend of experiencing Japan's overwhelming natural beauty and enthusiastically diving right into its rich kinetic folklore.
All right, part 4, spirituality in Nepal and Morocco.
Up in the Himalayas, the spiritual reverence is just palpable. The author's time in Nepal isn't just about high-altitude trekking. It is really about encountering living theology. In Beyond the Thunderbolt, the author dives into the symbolism of the Vajra, or the thunderbolt. It's a core symbol in Himalayan Buddhism, representing the indestructible, diamond-like nature of spiritual power and firmness of spirit. The writing reflects a mind actually pausing to absorb these massive theological concepts, ultimately finding that the physical elevation of the mountains is perfectly matched by the elevation of the local spiritual philosophy. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer sensory shift between these vastly different environments. The stark contrast here triggers entirely different types of introspection. Think about it. You have the biting, silent chill of a Sapporo winter, where the cold essentially forces you inward, creating this quiet, solitary peace. And then, boom, you slam into the baking, relentless heat of the Moroccan sky. The vibrancy and intensity of Morocco pull the traveler forcefully outward. It's just a great showcase of how extreme climates dictate our internal rhythms, fundamentally changing not just what we see, but how we process our own thoughts.
Because of that outward pull, the Moroccan entries really ground us in deep cultural immersion. The author steps directly into the sensory overload of the region. A bait refers to a traditional home, and through a bait of Medina life, we get transported into the winding, chaotic, and incredibly alive alleys of the Medina. The narrative practically breathes in the scent of spices, the intricate geometry of the architecture, and those deep roots of the pre-Islamic past that still influence daily life there. It is a full-on exploration of community and tradition wrapped in the vivid colors of North Africa. And finally, part 5, the blogger behind the journey. Let's look at the human heart of all this. Tracking the actual milestones of the blog itself reveals such a fascinating evolution of a writer's voice. A traveler's perspective in year 1, filled with that wide-eyed discovery, is fundamentally different from their perspective in year 13, which is layered with mature, seasoned reflection. Watching the blog grow into its teen years is honestly a testament to an unbelievable commitment to the craft of writing. It really shows how the act of documenting the journey actually becomes a vital part of the journey itself. But the true emotional core of this massive archive is found right here in the On Golden Bond series. These deeply personal essays totally humanize the thousands of miles traveled. In My Old Man in the Seafront, the author actually unpacks his father's letters from Benidorm, coming to the realization that his own wanderlust is deeply generational. Traveling isn't just about escaping to see the world. Sometimes it's about walking in the footsteps of ancestors, trying to understand the world that they saw. These entries beautifully ground the international adventure in familial love, proving that our deepest explorations are often into our own personal histories. 359.9. Now, in a modern internet ecosystem that is completely obsessed with going viral and getting millions of fleeting algorithmic views, this subscriber count is actually incredibly meaningful. It represents a dedicated, intimately connected community of readers who genuinely value slow, thoughtful introspection. It's like this quiet little corner of the internet where people gather to share deliberate attention, finding real value in a long-form journey rather than just a quick scroll. So the crucial point is this. After exploring this incredible archive and witnessing how the art of Italy, the faith of Israel, the snows of Japan, and the heat of Morocco shaped one person's life over 17 years, I want to leave you with a thought. True travel is not measured by the stamps in your passport, but by the internal distance you cover along the way. So, what would your own transcendental travelogue look like? How are you actively observing and documenting the world to better understand yourself? Thanks for hanging out and exploring this with us today.